Bob.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm Bob Surridge with the Southport Historical Society, and welcome to our December second Tuesday talk. As I guess the name kind of infers, we have a talk on the second Tuesday of every month, and it's nice to see you all here, and I encourage you to keep the calendar and watch it, and watch what's coming up, and enjoy it with us. Today, this fellow we just brought out of the brig, Tim Terman, who's a local artist, historian, musician, bike rider, kayaker.
I think it's it.
Is that good?
That's good.
And speaker, and a good speaker.
Going to talk to us about sea shanties, and he started out, he spelled it wrong up there, but that's okay.
How do you spell?
E-Y-S, the right way.
What? How do you
The
spell?
right way.
What's the right way?
Not that way.
S-H-A-N-T.
Tim, would you come on?
Y-S?
Are you going to sit? You're going to sit? Or you just gonna
I'm going to stand there when you get out of the way.
I will. Tim Terman.
Okay. All right. So really, that's spelled incorrectly? I've seen it spelled so many different ways. You can spell with a C, you know, C-H-A-N-T-E-Y-S, C-H-A-N-T-Y-S. That's my way of spelling it. I don't care what it all
Depends on
says.
what part of the country you come from.
Depends. Thank you. So, sea shanties. So I'm going to talk a little about in those contexts. Now, yeah, I hope no one's going to be disappointed that I don't talk too much about the Menhaden, but I'm going to talk about the Menhaden folks here because we have the tradition of the Menhaden fishermen here who sang sea shanties. But I'm going to have that in the context of the deep sea, the deep blue water clipper ships and merchant seamen of the 1800s. For me, and I don't know how it was for you, maybe you just came because you come to all the talks, but maybe you came because you like sea shanty, you've heard sea shanties, and you maybe sang a sea shanty at some point. For me, it goes back to junior high school, I think. We had music classes back at Shawnee High School and junior high and elementary school in Louisville, Kentucky. And I remember singing a song, Old Shenandoah. Old Shenandoah, you know that song? You all may have heard that. It's the first time I think I ever heard a sea shanty. I didn't know it was a sea shanty. I don't think the teacher told me it was. But in doing research for this talk, I found out it was a sea shanty. And I had the notion it was about the Shenandoah River. According to what I read, it didn't. It was an Indian chief named Shenandoah, and the sailors sing this song about, oh Shenandoah, I love your daughter, and I want to marry her. And there's a whole, but anyway, that's the first time I ever came across sea shanty. Later on, the Clancy brothers, the Drunken Sailor. What do you do with a drunken sailor? What do you do with, y'all heard that song. We'll get into that a little bit in a little while. And then made a trip, I think it was our honeymoon. I take my wife to exotic places like Mystic Seaport. We went to, for our honeymoon. Why do you want to go to Mystic Seaport? Yeah, all right. Was hoping for something else, but we went to Mystic Seaport, and there was a guy up there. They do a nice job up there. There was a guy singing the shanties, and it just blew my hat in the creek. It was so wonderful. Then after that, I lived in West Virginia for a long time, and I went to a music workshop up there to study the banjo a little bit. And there was a guy there doing sea shanties. Jeff Werner is his name. You may have heard of him. He's well known for folk music and so forth. And he sang some. So that's kind of but I didn't know much about sea shanties. So, but anyway, I'm talking to Bob one day, and I said, Bob, you know, Southport here, it's interesting, you know, they have all the bars down here at night. I know you all go to them frequently. And they, you know, what kind of music they have. I don't think they have sea shanties. In my opinion, they should. This is what I'm saying to Bob, and Bob says, yeah. He says, you know, you ought to do Tuesday talk on that. Here I am. So I've learned a lot about sea shanties. To me, this is like doing a book report in
Backstory, popular demand.
Yeah, last time I did, Bob said, oh, you should do a thing on the John D. Gill sinking. And I said, oh, all right, Joe, I can do that. And I played a song last time. It was Reuben James, Woody Guthrie song he wrote after the Reuben James got sunk by a U-boat. And I thought at that time, if I play the banjo, he'll never invite me back again. And don't you know, he's invited me back again. But anyway, that's just a little background on all that. Yeah, so just background, some of the stuff I've been looking at to get background on this to give to you all. I got that book by William Main Dorflinger, I think that's how you say his name, wrote that book, Songs of the Sailor and the Lumberman, really good stuff. The Maritime Wilmington, that was one of the books I bought when I first came down here, and I got some illustration out of that. 2 years before the mast. Has anybody read that book? Wow. I had read it a long time ago, and just to prepare for this, I said, well, I should read 2 years before the mast again. And it's amazing. He had a good bit of mention of sea shanties in that book. Lori Sanderlin at the Maritime Museum she got a master's degree in maritime stuff. And one of the courses was on the sea shanty and music of the sea. And there's other kinds of music of the sea besides sea shanties. And she gave me her course material. Plus, when I took Jeff's course up at Augusta in West Virginia, I bought this. That's volume 1, and I think there's like 6 or 7 volumes there. And Larry Meisel, is that how you say his name? Yeah. Meisel's book, get some background on the Menhaden. Susan Carson Research Room, and thanks to the Historical Society for inviting me. So I'll talk a little bit about short, sharp shanties because it's relevant. It's a play on the names of some people involved in shanty. John Short was called Yankee Jack, and he went to sea at the age of 9. And he died at the age of 92 in 1933, and he was born in 1839. He became a shanty man. That's the man himself, right there, sitting there. Boy, you know, I kind of trying to look like him. Got the sweater anyway. But he gave Cecil Sharp, okay, Yankee Jack, John Short, gave Cecil Sharp a bunch of shanties, 60 shanties. And how do we have sea shanties that we can sing? The music book that we had, Old Shenandoah, in, or the Drunken Sailors that the Clancy brothers sang, it's because people like Cecil Sharp went out and got these guys to sit down and transcribe their songs or record them later on. Cecil Sharp didn't have recording material. Later, collectors of music had mechanisms for recording. They were primitive. I mean, you know, she's got something over there can record, you know, perfectly, you know, on a little thing like that. I think back in those days there was a big box they had to set up, and they did it. That was the early folk revival in a way, because they actually got in contact with these old sailors and wrote down their songs and preserved them. Because, I mean, we wouldn't have Drunken Sailor and those songs without these guys. I'm going to talk about them some more later. Here in Southport, we have this wonderful tradition of the menhaden fishing. Of course, for most of us, we're glad that that's over with, because according to Mizell in his book, the menhaden fishing went clear through to the 1990s. And according to him, it went out partially because it stunk. It smelled bad. And at that time, we were starting to get tourists here. Or they were. I wasn't here, but people. The economy was changing from fishing to tourism and people coming and retiring here and so forth. And it came into conflict. And I guess one of the worst things that happened was, it was in 1994, there were 3,000 pounds of dead fish. Now, I don't know how they got spilled, but there was a fish spill. 3,000 pounds of menhaden floated up on Oak Island Beach. And Oak Island had to pay $10,000 to clean it up. So that was like, you know, the last straw, according to Mizell in his book. And so that's gone. But if you don't know too much about it, and I'm one of you, but I know a little bit about it, this is how it worked. See, now this is just the wake from the boats. This is the net, and down in here there's a bunch of fish, and they're coming together, and they're going to have to pull this net in and squeeze that down until they can get all the fish out of there. Okay.
That's called the purse.
Purse, yeah.
Like the purse. Put something in the
Purse
purse, pull
seine
the string.
fishing, yeah. And here's some of the boats down in, and this is out of the Port State Pilot. It's a State Port Pilot. Anyway, they'd spot these fish from up in these crow's nests up here. Somebody would get up in, I don't know how they got up there, but they got up there, and they could see the fish. I guess you can see them in the water, the disturbed water, and they go over there and circle them. It started here in about the 1900s, and there was a lot of people working in the fish factories that took these fish, squeezed the oil out of them. Apparently menhaden is an oily fish, and you get fish oil out of it. You take it as a supplement these days. They like to, the supplement, people like to say that it's good for you somehow or other. It's not been proved, but they contend that it is, and a lot of people take that. Somewhere here I have a list of all the things. It's called pogey, it's called fatback, it's called menhaden, it's called alewives. Those fish, pogey, yeah. Okay, now this is the picture that Bob, you used in advertising this. And you got to look closely here. It's a little bit hard to see. And where's my cursor? I should have a cursor up there somewhere. It's gone away. Well, can you see? I'll get up and point it out to you. Okay, so they squeezed that thing down, the fish. This is all fish in here. Here are the men pulling at the nets all along here. See them? It's a little hard to see. Those two boats have come together. They corral these fish and they're pulling them up. Just to give you a little background on how that worked. Might have to go and use this one. There's the cursor. Okay, so through the Maritime Museum and Lori Sanderlin, I acquired this bit of, and we're going to listen to these guys sing some of their songs. I've got to apologize for the band going across there. She gave me a huge file. I had to cut it down, electronic file, and I got software, a free trial version of this software, and it puts that little thing across there. That I wasn't going to go out and buy the software for $99 to give this talk, so you've got to put up with that. It's mostly listening, okay? So let's listen to these guys. Oh, there's the cursor. Here we go.
Bye-bye, bye-bye, sweet Louisiana. Bye-bye, sweet Louisiana. I thought that I heard a loving baby say, I won't be home tomorrow. Get back now. Get back up, back up. Sweet Louisiana.
Watch this guy here. He's actually going back and forth. They remember it so well from actually doing this. There's a net here. It's something, they had to have something in their hands to do this. Watch it. Pull it.
I thought that I heard my northern play. I won't be home tomorrow. Right there. I got it. Sweet Louisiana, I love you so. Bye, sweet Louisiana.
They're good and down, and now they're pulling them up.
That I heard, beloved baby.
Get a little rest break. Now they're going down to get them again. Watch him go. He's getting into it. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to cut them short there because I got a lot of music to share with you. But there's your Menhaden. They don't get too big. I think that's about as big as they get. That's what they look like. And to this day, there's not much Menhaden fishing out of Southport. I don't guess there's any. But Virginia, there's a company, Omega Protein, that's still, according to, and I found this in the Virginia pilot, hundreds of millions of pounds of fish. Oh, they're also called bunker. That's the other one I was looking for. Bunker, alewives, fatback. The Omega company is still taking millions of pounds of fish in. And there's a good bit of controversy about it. I'll just mention that. The bunker, the Menhaden, are the low on the totem pole fish for all the bigger fish. And they are at the bottom end of the food chain. And there's some people say, you know, they really need not be taking that, making fish meal out of it, selling it to China, and having these places feed it to fish in aquaculture, and then shipping it back over here for us to buy as frozen fish. That's topic of another talk. But it's got nothing to do with history, I guess. Maybe it does. But anyway, back to the Chanteys. You heard them singing what might be called, what the musicologists, ethnomusicologists called a Negro work song. Is a Negro work song, is a shanty. And I've had to consider these things while I've been putting this together. So, looking at the shanties and looking at the structure of that we just saw, it was call and response, number one. I think it's a basic thing in shanties. You have a shantyman call, and you have the guys respond. And so he calls while they're kind of taking a break, and then they respond and pull. Strong beat and strong rhythm. Da, 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 da. Nice, and work is done during the song, okay? That's real important. A very simple lead, a shantyman lead, and a simple response. They're not complicated songs. They're not ballads. They're not telling what often happen with shanties. Fragments of a song the shantyman heard, he'd incorporate it into his shanty as they work. Parts of the songs just to fill that space. So that's not telling a long story generally, and you'll see in some of the shanties that we're going to listen to. That was called Bye Bye Rosianna. As far as I can tell, Bye Bye Rosianna, I won't be home tomorrow. And talking about how sad he was to be leaving Rosianna. Let's see what happens next here. Okay, so that's about all I'm going to deal with the pogie fishermen. There's a lot more to that, of course, but I wanted to go on and talk about the deep sea shanties. This is from that book, Maritime Wilmington. This beautiful, beautiful, this photograph is remarkable. And it actually had attribution, Yates and Alexander Orr, 1880. That is a beautiful photograph. I mean, these are some photographers who composed a heck of a nice picture of two square-rigged ships, one behind the other, coming up the Cape Fear River to Wilmington. And we have this guy sitting on the dock out here. So we're talking about square-rigged ships. We're talking about these ships here. And I might be able to point out here, here are the anchors. They're huge. Here's one on this side. That's just the arms of the anchor. I don't know. Does anybody know what those are called? I know the things on the bottom are flukes. These things, I think, are arms on the anchor. They're huge. Heavy things to haul in. Keep that in mind. But we have that tradition here in Southport because these boats were sometimes anchoring out here, sometimes just passing by. And no doubt you could hear sailors singing shanties. This is 1880. This is probably about the same time. There just wasn't any caption with that one. So, I try not to get out of order here. So oh yeah, here's a square-rigged ship. Of course, you all know this is the foremast, this is the mainmast, and this is the mizzenmast. You know that. You know this is the foremainsail. This is the lower topsail. This is the upper topsail. This is the top gallant. This is the royal, and this is the skysail. Right?
We believe you.
These are these different. But to get these, I didn't know it, but these things would actually come off, and these are called the yards, and they would lower down. They had to be hauled up. Okay, very interesting. That's just background. I want you to remember those names of the sails, all right? But anyway, so I told you one of the first songs I heard, and this has been around for a while. This is I happened to come across that. The internet is a wonderful thing. I mean, you get out there and start doing some research on sea shanties, and you find all kinds of cool things. It's an old Edison record label, Drunken Sailor Medley. So I don't know. I'm thinking 1920s or something like that. I don't know. That's an early record, maybe 30s. I don't know. But I've got the Clancy brothers here, so let's bring them in. And I have to jump back and forth here. But the technology that we use in here to make this work. Where's my cursor? I can't. The cursor just disappears on me every once in a while.
Look at the screen and you can see it.
Can you see it? No,
Yeah,
but
it's under the record.
Maybe that would help.
No, that's not going to do it. It has to be down here. Thanks for the suggestion. We'll get it eventually. I don't know where the
Are
cursor.
you confused?
Oh, no, I'm not supposed to be on that one. All right. Yeah, see that you can't click on that. And I found out that the problem with PowerPoint is
It's not live once you put it on there. On the slide.
oh, I found the cursor. Okay. I'm going to have to use an extreme measure here.
Up to your raging controversy over spelling. I know that Chanteys is the French word for sing, and that's spelled C-H-A-N-T-E-R. So there's a You know, corruption or translation from French to the American version. I was just trying to fill time.
Yeah, thanks, I appreciate that. Well, I found it. I mean, apparently this is going to happen every once in a while, but let's see if we can get this.
This song is called a Stomp and Go Shanty because whenever they came to the chorus part, and maybe you could do this when you come to it, hooray and up she rises, hooray and up she rises, hooray and up she rises early in the morning. Well, on the hooray and up she rises part, they used to stamp their feet. Hooray and up she rises, hooray and up she rises, hooray and up she rises early in the morning. But only on the chorus parts there, do you hear that? I mean, you get power crazy, you're going thumping the tables and wives and every bloody thing. Only on the drunken disorderly tonight again. Thanks be to God. Throw back the heads, but don't only stamp on the chorus parts of hooray and up she rises. You right? You right? Okay, right, mate. Sailor, what will we do with the drunken sailor? What will we do with the drunken sailor early in the morning? Hooray, up she rises, hooray, up she rises, hooray, up she rises early in the morning. But put him in a longboat till he's sober, put him in a longboat till he's sober, put him in a longboat till he's sober early in the morning. Hooray, up she rises, hooray, up she rises, hooray, in the morning. Give my hair to the doctor, give my hair to the doctor, early in the morning. Hoist them up to the topsail yard, hoist them up to the topsail yard, hoist them up to the topsail yard, early in the morning.
Okay. So, and this is way hey. You'll see it written differently, and different. The same title of the shanty will have different words occasionally, taken from over here, taken from over there. It depended on and the shanty men would sing them differently from one to the other. What's his name? Dorflinger makes a big point in his book that you can't be dogmatic about the shanties. This shanty can have some elements that's also in that one. It has a different title. So the thing, if you look back at what we talked about, what makes a shanty, that what you heard was not a shanty. Why? Well, they weren't standing on the deck of a ship, first of all. They weren't in a menhaden boat, because part of the shanty thing is you need to have salt water flung in your face when you're singing these. That's the shanties for the sailors were not about having fun and singing. It was about getting the work done. It gave them strength. Dana in his 2 years before the mast, and I've got that quote in here somewhere. And if I haven't come to it, I will come to it at some point. That's further along, I guess. But he talks about how, we couldn't have got the work done without these songs. So that's one there, just to get you going. Now look, you're all going to have to sing before you leave here. You all understand that, right? Okay. All right, are we going to have...
What do you think the term walkaway shanty was?
Oh, okay, yeah, thank you. I meant to mention that. I think that's in my notes to talk about that. Where are we? Walk away and stomping. They also call it stomp and go. According to what I read, I wasn't there at the time, but this is what I've read.
You don't remember being there.
I don't remember being there at that time. It may have been, and I come back around. So stomp and go, and he says that the sailors. He explained. He says you stomp. Well, they weren't doing that. They were doing this. That's how they stomping on the deck, or that was a stomp and go, as opposed to, I'll get back up here so you can see, hand over hand, halyard shanty. That's not stomp and go. This is stomp and go. Okay, so you learned about shanties, aren't you? Because they're all different kinds. There are different kinds of shanties, different rhythms and so forth for different situations on that where they were working the boat. And so let's see, folk revival. So now the Clancy brothers, to jump back, folk revival of the 1960s, that's the second folk revival. Without those guys, Cecil Sharp and so forth that collected the music, wouldn't have had the folk revival in the 1960s. Okay. All right. All right, well, I'm going to have to, that isn't working that way, so we'll make this work. Technology's out of control here. Push slideshow. Close that.
You got your next one.
Okay, if that's the next slide, that's what I wanted. So I'm gonna give you a moment. This is what I've been dealing with when we're talking about different kinds of stomp and go shanty, the Hellier shanty, the capstan shanty, the windlass shanty, all of those. Just read that for a minute. Let's see. To me, when I read that, it says, well, it might be this, but it could be that, and it could be this, but it might be that also. So, and there are these scholars, these people who write about these, and they write books about it, and this is what I've been reading for the past month. No wonder I'm having trouble here with this. Okay, so it confused me, and so I decided I wasn't going to really worry too much about what kind of shanty this is and what kind of shanty that is. A lot of them have the tag on it that this is such and such kind of shanty, but I'm not going to go into that too much. Here we go. This is the Dana, the context. So you can read that. The last paragraph, many a time when a thing goes heavy, we don't put it that way. Read this book if you haven't read it. David's book, 2 years before the Mass, he was in college, and his eyes started going. He was having problems with his sight. And, you know, if you have vision problems, what do? You go and sign on to a merchant ship and go on a sailing trip for 2 years. So, you know, that's gonna make it better. And the deprivation of these sailors, the stuff that they went through, it's incredible. And I'm just about done with the book. I've just about got him back to Boston. They sailed out of Boston. But when a thing goes heavy, well, a thing goes heavy is when, you know, bad weather, the water's coming over, it's freezing, it's cold, their hands are numb, and they've got to do the work or they may all die. I mean, each seaman on the ship was integral. He, coming back around Cape Horn from California, his voyage was to California with mercantile items to sell out there, and California was in the hands of Mexico at that time. It was the 1930s. That was Mexico. They took hardware and stuff out, manufactured goods out of Boston, and got hides and brought them back, hides and stuff like that. So to come back around the Horn, and of all times, the worst time, he had not been sick the whole trip, and he came down with a terrible tooth infection. And he said his head swelled up to like 2 sides, and he was so sick, and there was no medicine. And they had laudanum, but they said, we're going to say that for an emergency. And your head, being 2 sizes too big, is not an emergency. And, but the mate did say, go down, stay down in the forecastle, and rest up. You are in pretty bad shape. You might die. But and he wanted so badly to come up and help his shipmates because they were having a really rough time up above. And these are the kind of things. So when a thing goes heavy, the song gave them extra strength. And I think you talk to the Menhaden fishermen. That song, there's something magical about music. It gives you strength. To us today, we don't need it so much that we go out, drink beer, and dance. Back in those days, they reefed the Top Gallant sail with songs. But anyway, I love these quotes from Dana. Okay, so all right, this is our time. We're going to do one now. All right, you can't sit there and think about a shanty. You're going to have to help me out here. And I've got a real simple one for you, because I knew historians are simple-minded people. And so this is called So Handy, and it's called a halyard shanty. Can you believe the ropes and stuff? Can you name all the ropes on there? I can't, but there's a halyard. And these were ropes that were fixed to a block and tackle called a fall, and used to raise these yards up. So it's called handy, so handy. And your part is handy, me boys, so handy. Can you do that?
Probably not.
We'll try. The thing about shanty singing is these seamen, they were not, this was during the time where, before the iPhone, before we had earplugs, things that we could, you ever notice people walking around with these things in there? You can't talk to them because they're listening to music, you know? You want to say something to somebody, well, I can't talk to that person, they're listening to their iPad, iPhone or something. But in these days, people sang to entertain each other, and so it wasn't unusual. One thing to keep in mind also is the sea shanty was sung with work. They had the forecastle songs, and the forecastle is the seaman's term for the forecastle. That's where the seaman slept, up in the bow. The officers, the captain, the mate, and those folks were in the stern. Didn't get as wet back there. But the forecastle songs would oftentimes be ballads and songs that would have a story and so forth, different type of song from the sea shanties. This is a shanty, and it's the chorus is really easy. So the setting is we're on deck. You're the crew. I'm the shantyman, and the captain says. Captain, by the way, does not speak to the crew. When the captain speaks to the crew, it's a very important. He will talk to them before the voyage starts and say, hey, we're all in this together. I want you to do your duty and job, and we'll come back and you all have plenty. All I got for you. Next time the captain talks to you, you're probably in some kind of trouble or something, but the captain talked to the mate, and the mate talked to the crew. So the captain says, set your main upper topsail. You remember what the main upper topsail is? Set your main upper topsail. And the mate says, aloft there, overhaul them bunt lines and spilling lines to the topsail. So the shanty man, everybody's ready. They know what's going on. They're getting ready. They know their jobs. So the shanty man stands, and the mate says to him, haul away. And the shanties apparently started out with the shanty man crying, oh, hey, oh, or something of that nature. I've seen it in different forms, okay? Now, when I point at you, oh, you're going to say that, okay? Handy high and handy low.
Handy, me boys, so handy.
Handy high, oh, it's handy high, and away we go.
Handy, me boys, so handy.
Around Cape Horn and through frost and snow.
Handy, me boys, so handy.
Rally you may, but go you must.
Handy me boys so handy.
Now up aloft and down below.
Handy me boys so handy.
Up aloft that yard must go.
Handy me boys so handy.
That's right. Y'all, you guys are good. Yeah. So that's it. You just did a shanty. What fun. I just love it. Oh, by the way, I have an ulterior motive for being here. I want to start a shanty singing group. And that's how I got to talking to Bob. That's how I got here, and that's why I'm doing for this talk. Here's the sign-up sheet. Did you have fun with that?
Yeah.
Sign up. I'm going to start one. My thought is, did you go to the Wooden Bow Show?
Yeah.
Yes.
Went to the Wooden, did you notice the guy on the corners doing the music?
Yes.
Yes.
Do any of you know him?
No.
This man did a yeoman's job.
He did great music.
He did great. He did great, but I mean, he must have worn himself out. He needs help. And I'm thinking next time we have the Wooden Boat Show, I want to have a Southport Shanty show.
It'll be next year, first Saturday in November. They're moving it from September to November. Wow. Okay.
I'll be here.
Okay.
So, and this is a
Much time to
women
get
and
ready.
men's thing. And we want to have a woman sing the shanty here in a little while. You wouldn't naturally be out on a merchant ship or anything like that, but nowadays you can sing shanty.
Anybody that didn't see it, go to the Chamber of Commerce website. I photographed all of it, and you'll be able to see it.
The Wooden Bow Show. So anyway, that guy, did you take pictures of him? I don't know what his name was, but he sang "My Old Kentucky Home" 6 times. And of course, every time I had to stand up. And I was right across, I was with the aquarium exhibit across it. I had to stand up and do that 6 times. So anyway, he needs help. So, where are we? Okay, so there's the types, there's some of the types. There's the capstan, okay, for hauling up the anchors. And I've got another picture. You got on that and you round and around you went until you got that anchor. And I showed you how big the anchors are. They're huge, they're heavy. Oftentimes they're in the muck and mud. To get them up, it's no easy task. So you needed a good capstan shanty. It didn't have quite the rhythm of the halyard shanty or the pump shanty. It was more of a continuous round and round kind of shanty, but we're going to hear one of those in a little while. Types of shanties. Walk away, or stop and go. And the windlass was something like, oh, Moby Dick, that's right. I got to show you Moby Dick, the Moby Dick thing. Goodness gracious, don't let us forget that. Have you seen the Gregory Peck in Moby Dick? What a movie, what a movie. I named my son after Ishmael.
How many years ago was that?
How many years ago was what?
Gregory Peck and Moby Dick.
1960s?
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't make them like that. They don't make the movies like that anymore. All right, if I can find the cursor here, we're going to see just a little clip from that movie. Cursor, cursor, where did you go? He's up there, but I can't get him on here. Come on. Okay, just ignore that, all right? Just ignore it. We are going to get to that, but I'll tell you the truth. Don't know why I can't go from. This is perplexing.
I'll fill in some more time.
Okay, good, thank you.
There's a book called The Heart of the Sea,
Yeah.
and it was made into a movie, and it was the precursor, or the basis perhaps, for Moby Dick. And there was a sailing crew out of Gloucester or somewhere, and they went in the far South Pacific, and a white whale stove their boat, and then they took the whaling boats, built the sides up, and Tahiti was 800 miles away, but they were afraid of cannibals. So they sailed to Chile, which is 25 or 2,700 miles away.
Yeah.
And then ended up eating each other.
They drew straws, right? They drew
Oh,
straws.
yeah, it's
And you
a,
knew you were going to be the meal. This is not fiction.
it's a
true.
grisly,
Yeah.
but fascinating, and it's a fine piece of nonfiction.
And I gotta tell you, I was on the side of the whale. That whale was unbelievable. He was just mad. He was mad. He saw his relatives, his friends, his cousins, his mother being killed. And he said, this is the end of that ship. That ship's gone. I mean, that's all there's to it. And here's the beginning of that movie. Amazingly, I've been able to, let's see if it works. Yeah, you're gonna see the movie. She's handing out Bibles. That's Ishmael, just went on board. No, that's Ishmael. And that's the harpooner. I forgot how you pronounce his name. You know what they're thinking.
Jump! Bring their green pants! You, sports cat! Yes, you see! Bring! Good white sheet of bread, 3% more this year than the last.
That's the mate, Starbuck. That's his family waiting nearby.
Hoist the oars!
There's your shanty man.
And it's mighty drafty round the Cape of Storm.
See the yard going up?
Take care of the battle. 26 to pound it is. Stop for now. 3 years is a long while going. God have you in his holy keeping.
Now there's a windlass. Watch for the windlass. They put these poles in and turn it. It's coming up here shortly. I think this is pretty authentic. There you go, watch it. That's all there is of that, but I just wanted you to see that working. That's another, that was the windlass. And off they go. I'm going to see if I can turn this off. I will. All right, now, the question is how do I get back into the, oh, we'll get there. No, don't you worry.
So we'll all be looking for Moby Dick on Netflix next.
Oh, what a movie. If you haven't seen it, Gregory Peck was something else. He hated that white whale, I'll tell you. Okay, I wanted to, slideshow. I wanted to, well, just talk about some of these guys. In the lower right, that's Cecil Sharp. And you can see his dates, 1859, 1924. He was a collector of not only sea shanties, English, British. He collected songs. If you've ever heard of Morris dancing, he was instrumental in the revival of Morris dancing, which was a British Isles form of dancing that almost disappeared had it not been for him coming along and saying, this is pretty cool, and writing it down and passing it on to the next generation. Alan Lomax, that's a picture of him in North Carolina. He was here and he was performing some songs that he had collected. His dates, 1915 to 2002. Stan Hugel, the guy with the pipe that looks like a shanty man, 1906 and 1992, collected shanties. And I couldn't find a picture of William Maine Dorflinger, but he's one of them. And then Michael Luster, modern day. In doing research for this, I came across him. He got a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts and went up to Harker's Island, and there's a whole Menhaden video that he did documenting the Menhaden people up at Harker's Island. But I included our local one. But you know, so these are the kind of people that do that, and I think they deserve a tribute for what they did. And Pete Seeger, he deserves tribute. I always pay tribute to Pete Seeger because I played the banjo because of Pete Seeger. But more importantly, he's a link between, he's kind of an old timer too. He died just a few years ago, and old man, he was an old man. But he helped in the second, linking those old songs to the folk revival in the 1960s. Pete Seeger there, worth mentioning. All right, gonna be that way, are you? Yes. So anyway, the word, how do you spell it? Take your pick, any way you want to spell it. It seems like somewhere I read that they've kind of settled on shanty, okay, as the word S-H-A-N-T-Y. And you were mentioning it might have come from the French word, what was it, how do you say it?
Chanteys.
Yeah, okay, I missed French in high school.
So did I.
Well, you do a good job, you're very convincing. But, so there's 6 theories on where shanty came from, and I'm not going to tell you all of them, because it's irrelevant. I just do the shanties because I'm having fun with it. But, so the words may have come from the French. It may have come from chants, because those are chants, right? But the activity, the activity of these word songs, where did they come from? One theory that I kind of like was West Indies. The Africans and African enslaved people and the sons and daughters of enslaved people mixed in with merchant seamen because they were all of lower class generally, or they wouldn't be working so hard. And there's one theory that they would move these shanties down in the West Indies with I don't know why they moved their houses, but they would do that in Southport. There's a number of houses in Southport. When they don't do it in shanties in Southport, but in the West Indies, they would do these chants, moving their houses. And there's a theory that's one derivation of the word and the activity. So there's a couple things, I'll let you read those. And speaking of women singing, women do join in these shanties. So I expect some of you women here like to sing. Put your X right there. And this one I think is going to be easy to activate. So while you're doing that, this one I got to embed. This is great.
Oh, ollie-I-oh.
This is a song he's talking about.
Walking my boat.
Chilly man.
Ollie-I-oh. Ollie-I-oh.
Chilly man.
Oh, to the Carter-I-oh.
Chilly man.
Oh, ship the dead.
Chilly man.
Heavy as lead. Heavy as lead.
Chilly man.
Whoa, haughty cocks.
Chilly man.
Oh, split her blocks.
Chilly man.
Oh, on the rocks. Oh, on the rocks.
Chilly man.
Oh, rouser and shaker.
Chilly man.
Oh, shake and wake her.
Chilly man.
Oh, we will make her. Oh, we will make her.
Chilly man.
Yeah, he mentions that. Dana, in 2 years before the Mass, did not call these shanties. The word shanties came later when people started writing about it and talking about it. Shanties go way back to antiquity, Greece and Rome. There are some sort of songs that were sung. We don't really know. I mean, the record's not there. Maybe something that looks like a shanty in the 1500s, maybe the 1400s, that you might say that was one. But these people who do the research on this, they're not really clear on it, and they talk about it as maybe not. But the word, he never used the word. He called it singing out. The crew is singing out. And Cheerily Men was one of the shanties that they sang, and that was published 2 years before the Mass, in 1840, and he did his voyages in the 1830s. The golden age of the sea shanties was the 60s, 70s, 1860s, and 1870s, and also another thing that Dana said, can I run over 5 minutes or so?
We can excuse anyone that wants to. Yeah.
Oh yeah, if you gotta leave, you gotta leave. But I am running a little bit behind here. But I wanna, because I've got a lot more good stuff. But give me another 10 minutes, because it's 25 after. Dana said something interesting in his book. He said sometimes they try singing out, and it just didn't do. This was hard. They had no machines. All they could rely on was a block and tackle and so forth that multiplied the energy. You pulled a lot of line, and it pulled the heavy weight. But one thing that they were doing out in California, they were stuffing the boat with cowhides. And they used the block and tackle to pull that. I don't know how they did, but they were stuffing it into the ship. And he said sometimes, we try to singing out, and it just didn't work. And we try another. One song would do it. It was the most remarkable thing that a certain tune that they would sing out could move something that the tune before couldn't move. That's pretty interesting. So they were. I want to read this to you. He left Boston in the Pilgrim, got to California, and finagled his way to get transferred to the Alert, which the same company owned, because the Alert was going to head back. He says, if I don't get off of this Pilgrim, I'm going to be here another 1.5 years or so, and I'm going to miss my opportunity to get through college. Okay, I'm going to be too old. So he finagled his way onto the Alert, and the Alert was working these hides in. They're getting ready to go, and they'd been working 6 weeks in loading hides. The hides had been treated and everything ashore, and they were folded up, and they were squeezing them into the ship. And he says another ship owned by the same company came into this harbor. It's the California, and the California commenced unloading her cargo, and her boat's crews, and coming and going, sang their boat songs, keeping time with their oars. This they did all day long for several days, until their hides were all discharged, when a gang of them were sent on board the Alert to help us steve our hides, load our hides. This was a windfall for us, for they had a new set of songs for the capstan and fall. That's the block and tackle. And ours had got nearly worn out by 6 weeks of constant use. I have no doubt that this timely reinforcement of songs hastened our work several days. So this is the power of the sea shanties. I just love that book. So all right. So anyway, where did these songs come from? This is that long answer, the shanty word, but the long answer. I think there was a huge influence of enslaved Africans and people and the Black American descendants And one thing for certain, and all of the ethnomusicologists people say, the minstrel shows had a big influence on sea shanties. This was the entertainment of the day back in the 30s, 1830s, 40s, 50s, 60s, turned into vaudeville subsequently. But minstrel shows, and this is where I get to play the banjo. So the banjo was a minstrel show. Have you got that turned so you can get me in this, or should I make it? Well, I'm gonna sit in this chair. Is that gonna be all right? All right, I don't wanna. The minstrel shows were the banjo was a big. Well, you can see in the picture there. So see if you know this song. See, let's see if I know it. Song that leaked over into sea shanties, because these seamen would go to minstrel shows, and the shanty man come back, he's got that in his head. The next day he casts off, and he's going to go tell him where, Sacramento, and he works that into a shanty there. That was called, the response was doo-da, 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 doo-da. That was the response part of the shanty. So I want to go into this in a little more detail. Cotton screwing was another one of them that, cotton screwing. In my head, I have the notion that I saw a cotton press up at the cotton exchange up in, or there may have been a picture of them. But in order for ships to take cotton out and make a profit, they wanted to get as much cotton into the ship as possible. Same as Dana out there with his ship and the hides. They smushed it in there because every hide was more money. Every bale of cotton was more money. So they used these jack screws, very much like capstans. And the notion by some of the ethnomusicologists is that the seamen who would during the winter oftentimes not ship out, but get a job in Mobile, Savannah, Charleston, screwing cotton. They were big men, and they could do the work. And there were blacks in that group who sang these songs. And so the notion is that those songs came from the cotton screwing, the cotton presses back onto the ships. And so some of the shanties came that way. So there's minstrel shows, cotton screwing, etc. But it's interesting, the people, Dorflinger, Cecil Sharp and so forth, don't really, they talk about the Negro work songs. And I think the Negro work songs were the fundamental basis of, am I an ethnomusicologist? No. But I'm talking like one. I played one on television. But just from reading this stuff and reading some other things, I get the feeling that that's where it all came from, those rhythms of Africa. And so, is this here? Yes. Listen to this. This is going back to Africa. This is going back to Africa in the 1700s. This is a field recording from the Smithsonian Folkways recording. There's musical instruments. There's two guys. Call, response. That's what Chernoff had to say. Major characteristic of African music. It continues on about the same way. It takes a while to get used to that music, but so I think without the the enslaved Africans who came here and their descendants, you wouldn't have sea shanties. It was in, this is another good example. Oh, Lordy, let's see if we can get this one. But this is worth seeing. Do you know what Gandy dancers are? You heard of them. Gandy dancers, they maintained the railroad tracks during the time of the railroad. Now, of course, the railroads are going to come in later. As the steam ships came in later and started supplanting the sailing, the clipper ships and so forth. But they did have some overlap. And listen to this. This is Negro work songs, as the ethnomusicologists would say. Yeah, here we go. There we are. This is pretty interesting. This is worth seeing.
I saw on that list previously about black church music, and you still see and hear that same sort of, get that feel in black churches.
I don't know what this is. Okay. I don't know why it is. I can't get the cursor to where I want to get it when I need to get it there. Maybe I can do it this way. Okay. Yes. Okay. Here we go. Just so you can see the Gandy dancers. Yeah, I've got another example. Watch the poles. They're making rhythm with their poles. So what are they doing? The railroad tracks would get out of shape because of these huge trains going over them, and they had to be repositioned, and that's what they're doing.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
So you've got the visual there.
I noticed this. I'm hearing those poles going, and if we go back and listen to that one from Africa, there's a shaker in the background. The poles are going. It's pretty amazing stuff. All right, now let's see if we can get back over to the other thing. All right, where are we?
That's where you were.
Was I there?
Yeah,
All
I
right.
think that was the next one. No, wait a minute.
Bully and Alley, one of my favorite shanties, and I won't make you sing this. It's great though. I want you to hear a couple renditions of it, and here the "Help Me, Bob" on "Bully in the Alley." I saw one. If you get on YouTube, you can see all kinds of them. And the one says, "Help me, Bob. There's a bully in the alley." And I said, "No, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. You've got these seamen who are up aloft, furling the sails around Cape Horn in the freezing cold. Dana says they had to bang their hands against the sail to keep them from freezing. I don't know how that helps them keep them from freezing. But this is and somebody saying, "Help me, Bob, there's a bully in the alley." I said, I don't think that's authentic. I think bully in the alley means, "Help me, Bob, I'm drunk, I've stumbled, and I'm down here. Hey, Bob, help me up." I think that's what it's about. But this is a sea shanty. But there's some really great ones out there. I want to show you a couple real quick here. And I think maybe I've mastered how to do this. Yes, I know how to do this now. All right, let's do. Oh, and this is the pub. This is the pub where. I wish you could see these. I don't know. For some reason, I can't.
So help me, Bob, I'm bully in the alley. Way, hey, bully.
I don't know why. I can't.
The alley. So help me, Bob, I'm bully in the alley. Bully down the Jimbo now. Oh, Sally's the gal that I love dearly.
It's on.
Way, bully in the alley.
He's in his garage with a friend.
Bully down the Jimbo now. Oh, Sally, she's a bright mulatto. Way, bully in the alley. She's trim and sweet, but I can't get at her. Bully down the Jimbo now. Oh,
he's undertaken to record all of these sea shanties, and he does a pretty good job at it. Just happened to come across that. But in my title of his Context and Evolution, this is where sea shanties have come to today. people are singing them all over the place, but the one,
The bar rooms, yeah. We need to go to the bar rooms.
well, see, they're not, you have to go to Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Yeah,
That's the
where they
problem I'm having here.
Far
I've
away
got to
from
go
the
to
city.
Minneapolis. So hopefully, look, now, some of y'all are going to sign up here to do this, so let's keep going, I don't want to.
Hey, Tim, do you have to be able to sing to be a sailor?
I don't
Is that-
think
is that
so.
required?
No, but you know, during this time.
So I can't sing, so I can sign up.
You can sign up.
Okay.
You can, definitely. You don't, I mean, it's real simple. It doesn't have to be elegant. Sometimes it is. It's beautiful. There's some guys doing a capstan.
Where does the Pogie Shanty fit into the categories?
Well, the Pogie shanties are much later, number one. We're talking about the 1860s as being a highlight. The Pogie shanties, we didn't start pogie fishing around here until 1900s, 1920s, 1930s. So it's much later, but I think it's very much the same thing. It multiplied strength of the people engaged in that activity. Do you have time for one more?
I expect the pogie boats, that probably came more from the Negro work songs here in the South, and then with, because mostly Negro.
I don't know what that is. Hang on, I've got one more. The last song that they would sing before, this one is so sweet, so beautiful, you've got to hear it. They'd come in from a voyage. They'd come in from a voyage and, all right, we might even be able to see these guys. Did you see the guy in the
Yes.
garages for a minute?
Yeah.
Yeah. They come in from a voyage, they tie up, the last duty was to pump the bilges.
But I thought I heard the old man say, leave her, Johnny, leave her. It's a long hard pull to their next payday. For us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done, and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Oh, the skipper was bad, but the mate was worse.
The skipper was bad, but the mate was worse.
Leave her. He would cut you down with a spike or a curse.
He'd cut you down with a spike or a curse.
To leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done, and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Oh, pull your lovers, or you'll get no pay. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, pull your lovers, and then belay, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done, and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Oh, well, now it's time for to say goodbye. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Those pilings, they are drawing nigh, and it's time for us to leave her.
All right. Oh, that's it. This is not mandatory. I mean, you can sign this and then back out. But saying it just to make me feel better. But if you're interested, also, if you know people that might be interested, and we really do need this in Southport, you know. I came here in 2014, there's a few things I noticed that Southport didn't have. And a drum circle is one. I formed drum circle. We don't have people at busk on the city front, so I started doing that. You know what busking is?
Yeah.
That's people that go, street musicians. We don't have any street musicians. I'm disappointed in that. And third thing is shanty singers. So we need that. So if you know people, you know, and I know you would be a heck of a bass. I'll let you name on here, all right? Especially the men. Oh, look back there. The guy with the mutton chops. What are you, tenor?
No, I can't sing. I wouldn't embarrass your group.
You can chant, you can chant.
All right.
Possibly.
All right. And women too. If you're interested in singing on John.
Absolutely. You signing up?
Seth? Women?
No. Talk to my
Sign
husband.
up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.